So hello, my name is Joanne Carroll. I am an archivist in the manuscripts department in the National Library of Ireland. So I'm going to talk to you today about how we're trying to reveal hidden manuscript collections within the library. So since the establishment of the National Library in 1877, we have been collecting, preserving and making available a variety of materials for researchers to access in our reading rooms. But even as far back as 1898, the library's trustees' reports noted that the number of materials being acquired far outpaced the library's cataloguing staffing resources. Now, while our backlog does not quite stretch back to 1898, thank God, it has continued to grow over the decades. I'm sure it's a problem we're all faced with in our institutions. A backlog of collections, a lack of resources to catalogue and make available these collections, having to prioritise one collection over another, trying to provide access for researchers to both catalogued and uncatalogued collections. And there definitely has been a move in the past 10 to 15 years to acknowledge this issue of backlogs and hidden collections, with a variety of articles, reports and surveys looking at how institutions respond to backlogs and how possibly we should respond to backlogs. One of these articles is, of course, More Product, Less Process from Green and Meissner from 2005, which recommends reducing the amount of processing involved in cataloguing collections, making them quickly available and reducing our backlogs. So the article isn't without its critics, but it does raise an important point, that maybe we are doing too much to our collections to perfect them, to know exactly what we have, to arrange collections within an inch of their lives. So the article lays out the following time savers. So to reduce the amount of time spent on arrangement of collections, assuring adequate arrangement of materials for users' needs, limit the amount of cataloguing descriptions, so describing materials sufficiently for use, reduce preservation practices on collections, taking the minimum steps necessary for physically preserving materials. So with these steps, collections would become more available to users more quickly. But there is one aspect of Green and Meissner's article that I do slightly disagree with, and they argue that it's not necessary to remove metal fasteners such as staples and paper clips because repositories should store their collections in appropriate temperature and relative humidity conditions. And here is a lovely picture of some metal staples and fasteners and other beautiful metal clips that I've taken off our collections in the library. But from working in the reading room and seeing how materials are handled, fasteners of one form or another do damage to items. So it would be appropriate for us to remove any metal ties and staples to reduce damage from rust and general mishandling. More product, less process is actually quite an old school way of approaching archival description and accessibility. For example, the National Library of Ireland, one of our catalogues we have for collection discovery is the Sources database. This is based on manuscript sources for the history of Irish civilization created by the then director, Dr. Richard Hayes. Started in 1941, the project to catalogue manuscript sources relevant to the history of Ireland was completed in 1965, with a supplement published in 1975. Although this includes collections from other institutions such as Trinity College and the Royal Irish Academy, it lists a large amount of collections that we hold in the National Library of Ireland. And also just a side note on Dr. Richard Hayes, he really was an amazing man. Not only did he lead the way in producing the manuscript sources volumes that went on to become the Sources database, he was also a code breaker for the state during the Second World War and broke some Nazi codes that helped in winning the war for the British, and while also continuing to work as the director of the National Library. And I also read somewhere that he did 3 university degrees at the same time. So, amazing. So this is an example of one of the Sources records. So it is an entry for documents relating to Roger Casement's negotiations in Germany and the Irish Brigade, including letters from Joseph Mary Plunkett, 1914 to 1916, which is made up of circa 400 documents in 12 folders and packets. So clearly this is a very brief record for 400 potentially very important documents, with minimum cataloguing in terms of detail as well as subject headings. Obviously, this is a very extreme example of reducing processing of a collection, and you will be happy to know that these papers have actually been catalogued further and are going to be digitised as well. But this is the essence of the idea for revealing hidden collections. Reducing over-cataloguing of collections so researchers can access more materials that may otherwise have remained hidden to them. So with this in mind, the Manuscripts Department in the National Library are trying to make our hidden collections more available. So far, we have carried out an inventory of all of our uncatalogued hidden collections. We have an almighty spreadsheet containing basic information on collections, such as the name of the collection, the accession number, details of the collection, and the approximate number of boxes or items, if known. So to actually know what we have and to know what needs to be revealed is a really good start. So what then can we do with this information to make these collections more accessible? The first option is the nuclear option. So the nuclear option would be to put all this information that we have on our spreadsheets up on our online catalogue, accessible to the public. So minimal arrangement of the collections, a brief description or a brief record of each collection, describing materials sufficiently for use. So this could be just box level description, or if possible down to a folder level description, but definitely not item level description. Also reducing the preservation practices on collections, taking minimum steps necessary for physically preserving materials. This would include rehousing into archival quality folders and boxes, and Duncan's talk earlier showed the importance of these archival housing. And then removing metal fasteners if we can. Although this would reduce time in processing collections, I do think that this would put the burden of the work onto the reading room staff, having to deliver more materials to the reading room, managing materials, and supervising readers in the reading room as well. And also, like other institutions, I'm sure, space is an issue for us in the National Library. So if one of these revealed collections is located off-site in one of our off-site stores and a reader orders it, we need to be sure that we have the space to accommodate it on our premises. And at the minute, I don't think the library is in a position to carry out this particular option. So option 2 is to prioritise the hidden collections that we reveal. One way we've looked at this is the uncatalogued collections that readers have requested to see. So one of the most requested uncatalogued collections is the Father Dennis Fall papers. Father Fall was involved in the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland in the 1960s and 1970s. He worked closely with prisoners and their families during the 1981 hunger strikes, and he also campaigned for the release of the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4. At the minute, this collection is uncatalogued, and permission to access it is granted by Father Raymond Murray, who is the executor of the collection. The collection is made up of about 75 boxes of reports, newspaper clippings, correspondence, and personal accounts from families and individuals involved in the events during the most turbulent years of the Troubles. Obviously, this collection contains a lot of sensitive and personal information, and to reveal this as a hidden collection with minimal processing and cataloguing would be quite reckless and frankly unethical. So our final option then, option 3, is appraisal. We need to use our skills as archivists and librarians to appraise the hidden collections we have, and to have to acknowledge that not all collections are the same, and each collection will have to be looked at individually. We should also consider low-risk requested collections. So collections that have been requested that do not have data protection or ethical implications, such as the Father Fall papers. So collections that may be older in time span, that do not contain personal information of living people. Also, we need to consider collections that are historically significant or are related to upcoming anniversaries or institutional priorities, such as the decade of centenaries. So building on this then, going forward, we plan to create a policy and procedures around revealing hidden collections. So how to choose collections and how to make them more available by reducing processing and arrangement, and to know what is enough when it comes to description and cataloguing. We will also trial a selection of collections to see what works and what doesn't work. This will be based on the criteria and procedures laid out in the policy document. But we know that it's going to take time. It's not going to be an overnight project that will totally clear our backlog, but it'll be an ongoing process that will help in reducing our backlog and make more collections available for our researchers. We also need to bear in mind that revealing a hidden collection with minimum processing is potentially the first step in how a collection is catalogued and made available. At a later date, funding may be made available for further cataloguing, or it may become an institutional priority for improved access or digitisation. And clearly, we're not going to stop collecting materials. The steps we are taking when it comes to accessioning items and collections will also stop our backlog from increasing. Every item or collection that we accession, whether it's a donation or an acquisition, gets an accession record on our catalogue. These aren't available to view, however, on our public catalogue. For larger collections, a box list would be created onto our catalogue. Again, this would be unavailable for public searching, but it would help staff in locate a certain item or part of a collection when a reader requests to see an uncatalogued collection. Any single items or small collections get catalogued straight away upon accessioning, and these are accessible to the public. We've also created a donations form. So even before a collection comes to the library, we're asking our donors to provide information on the collections they want to donate. This will allow us to catalogue materials quicker because we have more information at the point of accession. Ultimately, the whole point in this is to try and reveal what's hidden. A hidden collection is no use to anybody. To reveal these collections is to add to the resources available to our readers, but also to add further context to our collections, not only in the National Library of Ireland, but also in the collections of libraries and archives around Ireland. And I did find this lovely quote by Thomas Lister, who was once the director of the National Library, taken from an article called "The Friendliest Library in the World" by the Scottish librarian Ernest Albert Savage. It is not the thought irresistibly suggested that increase in number in the books of a good library implies increase in worth, not merely in proportion to the number, but in a proportion far greater. In a well-provided, well-organised, and well-administered library, increase in number implies the increase in power and worth of every separate book, which is due to the light thrown on it by the other books. Every book gives more worth to every other book and receives and reflects worth from others. And so 2 books in such a library are more than twice 1 book, and 100,000 books of a value inexpressible. Thus, in contemplating the idea of a great public library, we note that in bringing together a collection of wide scope, of great size, as well chosen and admirably arranged as possible, there is profit to the nation or the city, not alone in the accumulate value of the books, but also through the increase in worth of each separate work due to its being in company of others. So I'd like to say thank you very much for listening, and if you have any experience of revealing hidden collections or working with more product, less process, please do get in touch because we need all the help that we can get. Thank you.